because I was so interested in JavaFX, I thought, okay, let's see how many companies are really using JavaFX, and I asked many of my customers, but I also asked on the web and asked them, would you like to talk a little bit about your applications, and so we can use it as a showcase, because there was a lot of resistance towards JavaFX. A lot of people didn't trust JavaFX, if Oracle will really support it in the future, and is it production ready. So I always thought that it was. I'm a fanboy, really. So I sent out this questionnaire. A lot of companies answered, and then I and a colleague of mine, Alexander Casal, we put this presentation together, and we showed it at Java 1 in 2015, and we did it again this year because people really liked it. Alright, so in this presentation I showed 10 JavaFX applications, and we call them real-world applications because they're not just little toy applications, but they're really apps that were needed to solve some real business case or to make money for our customers. And I also blog about it on my website, so you can read more about it there. The first presentation that I always show is PSI, because you have already seen the video and because you all know PSI. I skipped that. And the next application is called Sceptile. Sceptile is a calendar application written by a company that is in part located in Dubai, and the development team, I think, in Iran. And when I worked with them, I didn't even know if I was allowed to work with them because of legal restrictions and boycotts, but I think it was okay. So what they do is, let's just skip that. The idea is that you have your calendar and you tell the calendar what are your preferred times for doing certain things. So write documentation. You can say never. Or you can say yes in the morning between 8 and 10. And meetings between 10 and 12, and coding the rest. All right. So you create these time maps, and then you add a lot of tasks and appointments, and then the calendar will perform some calculations and assign your appointments to the best times where the software thinks you would like to work on them. Okay. It's a strange concept because I don't think that many of us have that luxury to really choose the times for their meetings and things, right? But anyways, that's what they do. And their application runs on mobile devices, on the web, on desktop, and they wanted to be on all the desktops, so they went with Java and JavaFX. And they came up with this, and here's a little video of what it looks like in action. And I think it looks okay, but not really modern anymore. And I told them, I said, I think you need to polish this. And well, they shipped it anyways. And then their customer said, this does not look good. And they redid it. And now it looks like this. And the good thing is that most of this looks still crappy with these beamers. This looks really polished. This is a high-res retina display screenshot. Okay, this is top-notch screenshot stuff. Anyways, but this.
At least the shadow is high-res.
This is really bad. Huh?
At least the shadow is.
The shadow is high-res. Yes, that looks good. Yeah, it adds some blurriness to it. But it looks really much better now, and most of the work that they had to do, they could do in CSS, so they did not have to recode everything. Right? So it looks like this now. They use CalendarFX as a framework. And this is, for example, a time map, times where they like to do this, whatever that is. I cannot read it. Right? Another use case, JavaFX adds a lot of modern features like gestures and touch. So in this application, you can see it. And this application is used for distributed agile development teams that want to have their Scrum meetings in the morning or lunch. Or how does it work again? Lunch or mornings? Whenever. So they have their meetings, their stand-up meetings, and then they have a Scrum board. And the guys here on the screen, they are somewhere else, and they also have a Scrum board. And they wanted the Scrum board to be interactive and just touch it and move things around, and the guys in the other country or other city, they can see the changes right away. So here we have this video of the demo, and you can see you can just touch the screen, move things around. This only works if you have a touch screen. It's important. And you see the second screen there in the back, how it moves directly. And these guys, this is an application developed by a company called Saxonia Systems. And they developed a framework for this too. It's an MVVM-FX framework, an open source framework that they use to implement this. Blah, blah, blah. Emirates, they are a customer of mine because they use the Gantt chart. And this is the application that they came up with. It's an application called NCO, Network Capacity Optimization. In this application, they load the entire schedule of their fleet, of all the planes that they have, and they have quite a few. Actually, I don't know if you've ever been in Dubai, but the airport really looks like this, and there's one A380 standing next to the other one. It's enormous. So they have a big fleet, and they always try to optimize the utilization of their aircraft. So, for example, Zurich, Dubai, there's an A380 flying twice a day, but they're different A380s. Some have more passengers and some have more cargo. So if they see that there are not that many passengers flying on that day, but they have some cargo, they swap planes, aircraft, the physical aircraft, and then they can save money with it. And they have 12 people working 24 hours a day, constantly optimizing the flight schedule, and they use this software. So they start with this, the users add some requests, like we need a new flight, or we need to change an aircraft type. They add all of these requests, they're being added to this list of requests, and then they try different scenarios to fulfill the requests. Okay, and they use this Gantt chart for it. And I think that's a video, yeah. So this is stuttering a little bit, but there was the screen recording software, not the performance of JavaFX, and not the performance of FlexGanttFX. Right? Okay, and some bad coding on their side also. But overall, this usually, when they scroll, it's very, very smooth. And they need to see a lot of flights all the time, and what they do is they select a flight, and then they see the red lines are the time bounds of the flight, and then they perform vertical drags to find a new time slot for the flight. Right, and they have split screen functionality. So before we had a horizontal split, now we have a vertical split. And they also do the quad. Show me the quad. Quad screen. Yes. Four splits. I really like this. Okay, the next application is used in operating rooms at hospitals. So the next screenshots, there are some images that some of you might find disturbing. When I worked at this at home, it was always tricky because my wife or my children would walk in and they would go, "Oh God, this is terrible." So there were a couple of really bad images. But if you like medicine, then this is cool. Right? The application that they wanted, and why they did not use HTML or web browser technologies, they wanted an application that runs on these screens, on these monitors, directly in the operating room. And the software should support the operating team to find out information about the patient, to take images and video recordings, and archive these media files with the patient data. And what was interesting here was that the project started with these nice HTML-based mockups. So they were basically throwing these mockups at me and said, "Can you do this with JavaFX?" And because I needed the money, I said yes. And yeah, but I knew that there would be a challenge. Okay? But okay, so it uses CSS and animations, and FlexGantt and JavaFX has that, so sure, of course I can. Right? So this is what the application looks like. We saw this before, so you can ignore the first part, but after the successful login, you will see a little bit more of the application. I cannot fast forward with this. Sorry. But again, different ways of logging into the application. Question? Somebody call. All right, so now we are in the system, and what you see here is the list of all the patients on that day at that hospital, and the doctor just randomly picks one. No, I hope you have some system. So he picked the right patient, and now what he can do is he has all of these video inputs in the operating room. So there are X-rays, there's ultrasound. There are a lot of devices in the operating room that deliver video, okay? And then there are several monitors, several screens in the room. And with the software, you can route video input to video outputs like this. And you can zoom in, zoom out, it's all animated. Yeah. So that was it already. And the application is already being used, and this is the software running in one of these screens at a trade show. And so these are big screens. Okay. Next application is in the logistics domain by a company called Linden in Seattle. And we are showing this here because, oops, sorry, too fast. Because what they do is they mix a lot of JavaFX and Swing. Yeah. So they use Swing here at the top because I think they invested a lot of time in having these nice tables at the top, and then the bottom part is all JavaFX. So these are transportation orders. At the bottom you see the details of the order, and then they use something that's called GMaps.fx. It's an open source project written by the guy who works on this project. So these guys wrote a commercial software, but then decided to open source parts of it because this is not a key element of their business, right? So they gave it to the public. And these markers, they show the locations of trucks in the application. Now the next application is used as a business registry software that's being used in Switzerland. And when you have a business, you have to register it. The address and the type of business that you're doing, the legal form, legal entity of your business, all of that has to be registered. And this was written by a company called ISO, and I work for them as a freelancer. And the application is currently being used in these 4 areas within Switzerland. So this is all of Switzerland. It's 8 million people, not very big. You cannot live anywhere here because it's all mountains. It's super expensive here and super expensive there. So they use the software in these 4 areas, and of course they want to take over all of Switzerland. And when they're done with this, world domination. But I think the rules are so different from country to country.
And then Mars.
And then Mars. So that's the application, and this is a very typical business application. So it consists of tons of forms. And what was a challenge for them, and I think that's important to mention, is the keyboard navigation within JavaFX, because that part is not very mature yet. So there's no pluggable focus traversal policy yet. So they had to really hook their code into the event dispatch mechanism of JavaFX to make sure that when the user hits tab, it gets to the correct next field. And it's not just going from one field to another, but they also wanted to be able to say page down and then go from the first field of this block to the first field of the next block, and then from there to whatever comes next. And they also want to make sure that if you're in a table and you reach the last column of the table and you hit tab, then you go to the first cell of the next row and not to the first cell of the same row. Or sometimes you want to be in the same row. So all of that really depended on the use cases, and they invested a lot of time to make this work, but they succeeded. But just saying that this is not given out of the box by JavaFX. You have to invest a lot of time if you want to have really high-end professional keyboard navigation. Right? And that's it. So in this demo, by the way, they registered a business called Java 1. And in this case, I'm also listing the reasons why did they not use HTML. They always talked about that they did not have any guarantee of sustainability. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to write the application now, give it to their customers, and know that the application is still running in 10 years without them doing any maintenance or changes. But if you do an HTML web-based application, and then your customer decides to upgrade their browsers, then I think many of us have been there. Then you have to make changes again to make it work, or then there's a new JavaScript framework that they need to support, and so on. So they wanted stability. They just wanted to write it now, create an installer for it, and ship the same installer for the next 10 years. This is an application used by a museum in Brazil for their inventory. It's an inventory database. And we added that to the presentation because it had really nice styling to it. And I think what's really important to notice is that when you write a JavaFX application, you can make it look nice in such a way that nobody knows that this is Java. In the past, that sounds strange, I'm a traitor. No, in the past, if you wrote a desktop application in Java, you could look at it and you knew this is Java because it looked crappy, because it had a Java logo, because it had a gray flickering box at the beginning, a couple of other reasons. You could just tell. Or the other thing with, like, you had a panel and a panel and a panel and a panel, and they all had borders. So you had like border, 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 border. You know, in Swing application, you always had nested borders over and over and over again because every control had its own borders. Right? But in JavaFX, with CSS styling, you can make them look really, really good, except on the screen. Okay, I need to create a low-res version of this presentation. Right? So it looks like this. I don't have a video for this one, but I thought it just looked really nice normally. Next application is used. I love this customer because they are located in Bavaria and they have great connections to the Bayern München football club. So now I get tickets whenever I want. So they do software for architects, and their solution is based on FileMaker. You guys know FileMaker, Apple product? Oh, good. It's not really, you don't really code in it. It allows you to create masks and forms based on a database, and you can make it look really, really pretty. But they wanted to add something that had more functionality, a resource simulator. So they wanted to write their own, and this is what it looks like. And again, Gantt chart, Gantt chart, and Gantt chart, and very heavy use of CSS styling, because they wanted this application to look very similar to the rest of their product portfolio. So this is the FileMaker application. And what they do is, the users, they work with this application, all the data is stored in this database, gets loaded into this application, and they can do a couple of what-if scenarios in this simulator. And when they're happy with it, they can choose the best scenario they like, and they can write it back into the FileMaker database. I have a little video. I think that's a screen recording on a retina display, so this has a lot of dots. Anyways, at the top you see all kinds of tasks that need to be performed. In the middle you see resources and resource allocations. And at the bottom you see costs and revenue. And they can, in the application, they can assign different resources to these tasks. So let's see, they open the property sheet here on the right-hand side, editing something, changing the date on the task, now picking a new resource, a new person, and doing a drag and drop onto the task, and now we see an update of the capacity profile here. So the users can use this, and they can see, let's say, let this person move on, work on this project for the next 2 weeks, and then replace the person with another person, and then let's see how the costs are evolving. So this is for big architect offices with many, many projects at the same time and many, many people working there. Again, this is the European Broadcasting Union. And their application is called NEOS. They have 150 people working there in Geneva, 24 hours a day, just scheduling radio and TV transmissions. And basically what they need to do is you have a transmission, somebody is recording something, this is sent to a truck, the truck uses a dish to upload the video signal, it goes to a satellite, it goes from there to a downlink. Ask me about the details, it's all complicated, but the guy giving this presentation at Java 1, this is all very fascinating. So if you get the opportunity, go and visit Java 1. There are a lot of fascinating talks. But this guy is doing a lot of Java 2D Canvas API rendering. Also hard to see. It looks fancy, no? Looks very scientific. If you want to read more about real-world applications, you can go and follow this link. Alexander Casal, he took all these applications we had and he wrote an article about it in English and also in German and published this on JAX Enter. And there are two more things that I would like to mention in this presentation. Nowadays you can also do mobile application development with JavaFX. You can deploy your applications on iOS and Android by using Gluon. Or you can also deploy them in the web as HTML versions by using JPro, which is a very new technology that was just released at the last Java 1 conference. That's it, and now we have a 10-minute break.